Where are the files? We were promised names, a client list, the truth, but years later, nothing. Donald Trump said they'd be released. Full disclosure, total transparency. He wasn't alone. Politicians teased it, journalists hinted at it, whistleblowers risked everything to expose it. And the world waited, believing those documents held the key to one of the darkest networks we've ever seen. But nothing came. No list, no indictments, no justice. Just sealed records, silent courts, and a media blackout. So what's really going on? Jeffrey Epstein didn't just have dirt on celebrities. He held leverage over global systems, politicians, billionaires, intelligence agencies, even royalty. And yet, years after his death, those same systems still protect the guilty. Why? What if Epstein was never the end of the story? What if that island wasn't just a playground for the elite, but an altar? What if the reason we haven't seen the truth is because what's behind it is far more demonic than political? This isn't about a scandal. It's about a system, a spiritual infrastructure that feeds on innocence, thrives in secrecy, and fears exposure. So let's ask again, where are the files? What are they hiding? And why now? Jeffrey Epstein didn't rise to power because of charm or credentials. He didn't run a real hedge fund. He had no degree in finance, no trading record, no public clients, no oversight. And yet, he lived in a $77 million Manhattan mansion. He traveled like royalty, dined with world leaders, and owned a private island marked by a strange temple no one could explain. How does someone with no qualifications gain access to presidents, princes, and tech giants? Because Epstein's real power wasn't money, it was leverage. From the beginning, his life reads like a manufactured asset. He went from teaching high school to managing the finances of billionaires. And along the way, he built quiet connections with CIA agents, Mossad handlers, and global operatives. But his danger wasn't his wealth. It was what he saw, what he recorded, and who was watching. His homes were bugged, his flights were logged, his island was isolated. And everywhere he went, he didn't just bring the elite, he brought their secrets with him. This wasn't just moral compromise, this was a system engineered to manipulate, expose, and control. And when it finally came crashing down in 2019, the machine didn't collapse. It covered its tracks. The cameras failed. The guards forgot. And the autopsy? Broken bones in his neck, more consistent with foul play than self-harm. Then Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. She was convicted of grooming and exploiting vulnerable young girls. But for who? You don't build an entire global network with no clients, no charges, no names in the room. They sealed the list, silenced the witnesses, and told the world to move on. But this isn't just about covering up sin. It's about protecting a system that feeds off it. And if you follow that system deep enough, you won't just find crime, you'll find altars. The deeper you go into Epstein's world, the clearer it becomes this was never just about private sin. It was about public protection at the highest level. He wasn't operating in secret. He was surrounded by celebrities, politicians, royalty, and billionaires, and he made sure the cameras were rolling. He wasn't hiding, he was documenting. And yet, when it all unraveled, almost no one paid a price. The names were buried, the footage vanished, and the only person exposed was Epstein himself. Why? Because the structure around him wasn't designed for justice. It was built to preserve influence, to protect the machine. Flight logs incomplete, court records sealed, witnesses suddenly forgetful. Even today, most mainstream outlets won't go near it unless they can keep it surface level. He's dead, move on, nothing to see here. But what if the silence speaks louder than the headlines? What if the same people who control the courts, the cameras, and the coverage were also on the plane? What if the outages, the failures, the coincidences were coordinated? This wasn't messy, this was meticulous. Because if the truth ever came out, Careers would collapse, legacies would burn, empires would fall. And maybe that's exactly why it hasn't.
There's a reason why this story won't disappear. Because it's not just about who's guilty. It's about what's at risk if they're ever exposed. This isn't a scandal, it's a spiritual shield covering a kingdom of darkness. And it's been operating long before Epstein and long after. And if we still think this is just about a list of names, we've missed the war happening right behind the headlines.
There's a disturbing pattern that runs through every high-level scandal, regime, and occult system in history. The children are always the target. Whether it's ancient rituals, collapsing empires, or modern headlines, one thing remains consistent. Those in power eventually reach for the most vulnerable, not just to exploit, but to corrupt, reshape, and control what comes next. Epstein's Island wasn't just about compromise. It was about appetite, the kind that grows in darkness and demands more than influence. It demands innocence. And behind every sealed file, every vanished log, every silenced witness, there's a question few were willing to ask. What were they really doing on that island? Because what insiders have described isn't just illegal, it mirrors something ancient. Symbols, rituals, blood. Practices we thought died in history, now reappearing in plain sight. And this isn't just about Epstein. We've seen the signs elsewhere, in entertainment, in fashion, in billion-dollar corporations that profit off of over-sexualization of children while hiding behind the mask of progress. This isn't activism, it's an agenda, a blueprint for conditioning the next generation to forget what's pure and question what's true.
This isn't just a political issue, it's a spiritual assault. Because when the enemy wants to shape the future, he doesn't start with chasing power. He starts with destroying purity. That's why Pharaoh killed the infants. Why Herod launched a massacre after Jesus was born. Why entire systems today are designed to distort identity, erase truth, and dismantle innocence. This is happening not just in courtrooms or boardrooms, but in classrooms, in algorithms, in the entertainment our kids consume every day. And unless we wake up and we say something, they won't stop.
We've asked why the files are still sealed. We've questioned why the names never came out. We've exposed the war being waged against the innocent. But there's one layer most people won't touch. What if this wasn't just scandal? What if it was worship? Satellite images of Epstein's private island revealed something strange. A blue and white structure perched on a hill with no visible doors, no function, no explanation. At first it was called a music room, then a gym, then just a decorative building. But researchers noticed something else. The design resembled ancient ritual temples, especially those tied to fertility gods and blood covenants. Baal, Asherah, Moloch, the same false gods that demanded child sacrifice in the Old Testament. And this wasn't isolated. Inside Epstein's properties were signs of something older than corruption. Owl statues, symbols of ancient spiritual watchers. Murals that depicted disturbing, ritualistic imagery. Hidden chambers beneath the floors. And locations aligned with ley lines, those ancient corridors used for spiritual rituals across cultures. This wasn't luxury. This was alignment, spiritual alignment. Everything points to one uncomfortable truth. Epstein's Island wasn't just a hideaway. It was a modern high place, a ground-level altar built to host darkness while the world looked away.
And that's the part no one wants to say out loud. The island wasn't just a crime scene, it was an altar. And what happened there wasn't just wicked, it was spiritual. Because this system doesn't just survive in secret, it survives through sacrifice. It's the same ancient pattern that we've seen for thousands of years. Blood, secrecy, power, control. And the reason the files stay sealed, the reason why the list remains untouchable, the reason why this still lingers years later is because the system didn't die with Epstein. It simply went underground again. He wasn't acting alone. This wasn't one man's influence. This was a modern ritual site guarded by wealth, cloaked in deception and protected by silence. We weren't just looking at a scandal. We were standing at the gates of something ancient. And now the question isn't who else was involved, it's this. Why are we still afraid to name what it really was? If you've made it this far, I need you to hear me clearly. This isn't just a disturbing story, it's a revealing moment. God is allowing the system to be exposed because he's given people a choice. What we're seeing isn't just a breakdown of morality. It's a global revealing of what's been operating in darkness for decades, centuries even. The reason why the world is numb to this, the reason why justice keeps getting delayed, the reason why so many are still asleep is because the system wasn't built on justice. It was built on compromise. And the people defending it, they're not just covering for a man, they're guarding a throne. A throne of perversion, power, control, blood. And make no mistake, this isn't just about Epstein. This is about the spirit that even operated behind Pharaoh, through Herod, through every generation that sought to kill the innocent before deliverance showed up. This is a war between kingdoms, not left versus right, not rich versus poor. The kingdom of God versus the kingdom of darkness. And the only way to win in this hour isn't through outrage, isn't through hashtags or headlines. It's through discernment, holiness, boldness, and truth. We need eyes that see, ears that hear, and hearts that are clean because the enemy feeds on mixture. This is a time to repent, to fast, to pray, to speak when others stay silent, to raise our children not in fear, but in fire. Because if the altars are being rebuilt, then we better make sure our lives are burning for the right kingdom. Everything we walk through, it's not over. It's still unfolding right in front of us right now. The file's still sealed, the name's still hidden, the system's still operating. And the world still pretending this was just a glitch in the news cycle. But it wasn't a glitch, it was a glimpse into a deeper agenda. A spiritual infrastructure that's now being exposed piece by piece. And while the world waits for the next distraction, God is sounding the alarm for those who have eyes to see. This is bigger than Epstein, it's bigger than politics. It's a battle for souls. A war between truth and deception, between light and darkness, between the people of God and the systems of Baal. But here's the good news. Jesus doesn't just expose the darkness, he destroys it. He doesn't just call us out, he calls us up to walk in authority, to raise the standard, to be a remnant that won't bow, even if the fire gets hotter. You weren't born to be confused. You weren't born to be afraid. You were born to confront evil with truth, to shine light in dark places, to be a part of a generation that doesn't run from darkness, but tears down its altars instead. So stay awake, stay filled, stay rooted in the Word, because the war is real, but the victory has already been written. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe. Expose the lies, awaken the sleepers, and raise a generation that won't bow to Babylon.